Before you listen any further, let me ask you something, gently and without judgment. How many times have you lowered your standards just to keep someone close? How many times have you replied too quickly, explained too much, forgiven too soon, or stayed far longer than your heart knew you should? Not because it felt right, but because being alone felt heavier than being unseen. Most people never call this begging. They call it love. They call it patience. They call it understanding. But somewhere deep inside, you already knew the truth. You felt it in the tightness in your chest while waiting for a reply. You felt it when your peace depended on how someone treated you that day. You felt it when you kept giving more than you had, hoping that maybe this time, finally, you would be chosen. Here's the truth most people spend years avoiding. You were not only asking for love, you were asking for proof that you were enough. And that hunger does not come from weakness. It comes from old pain, from the quiet lessons life taught you about love, worth, and abandonment. Maybe you learned that love had to be earned. Maybe you learned that being fully yourself was risky. Maybe you learned that losing someone hurt less than being rejected for who you really were. So you adapted. You became easier, more agreeable, more available, more understanding. And little by little, your self-respect learned how to go silent. This audiobook is not here to shame you for that. It is here to wake you up. Because loving yourself more than anyone else does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean pushing people away. It does not mean choosing isolation over connection. It means you stop bargaining with your worth. It means you stop shrinking just to be loved. It means you stop begging for space in someone else's life while abandoning your own. Real self-love is not fragile. It is steady. It is disciplined. It is the quiet decision to never again trade your dignity for attention. And when you truly begin to love yourself more than anyone else, something powerful changes. You stop chasing. You stop proving. You stop over-explaining. Not because you no longer care, but because you finally do. You care about your peace, your time, your energy, your emotional safety. You realize that love built on fear is not love at all. It is attachment. And attachment always asks you to disappear a little to keep it alive. In this audiobook, you will learn why begging for love weakens your inner power, how emotional dependence is formed, and how to rebuild a sense of self that does not panic when someone pulls away. You will learn how to sit in silence without calling it rejection, how to set boundaries without guilt, how to walk away without hatred, and how to choose yourself without apology. This is not about becoming harder to love. It is about becoming harder to break. Because the moment you stop begging for love, the world begins to respond to you differently. People feel it, not always consciously, but deeply. They feel that your presence is no longer a plea, it is a choice. And the most important shift of all is this. You stop asking, will they choose me? And you begin asking, does this connection deserve me? So take a breath. Slow down. You do not need to prove anything here. You do not need to fix yourself before you begin. You are here to remember who you were before you learned to beg for love. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Why begging for love destroys your power. Begging for love rarely looks dramatic. It does not always look like tears, pleading, or desperation. More often, it hides in ordinary behavior. It looks like replying instantly when you are exhausted. It looks like pretending you are fine when something inside you is breaking. It looks like saying, "It's okay," when it clearly is not. It looks like waiting, hoping, adjusting yourself again and again so the other person will not leave. And every time you do that, something essential begins to fade: your power. Now, power is not dominance. It is not control. It is not making someone need you. Real power is self-possession. It is the quiet inner stability that says, I do not need to beg to be valued. The moment you start begging for love, even subtly, you shift the center of your life outside yourself. Your mood depends on their reply. Your confidence depends on their tone. Your worth depends on whether they choose you. That is not love. That is surrender. Begging teaches your nervous system one dangerous lesson. My value depends on being chosen. And once that belief takes root, everything becomes negotiable. Your needs become negotiable. Your boundaries become negotiable. Your truth becomes negotiable. You become careful instead of honest, pleasing instead of grounded, available instead of aligned. And here is the part many people do not want to face. When you beg for love, you are not asking someone to love you. You are asking them to hold power over you. That is why begging never gives what it promises. It may keep someone around for a while. It may create temporary closeness, but it will never create respect. Respect grows where there is self-respect first. People feel the difference between someone who is present by choice and someone who is present out of fear. When you are afraid to lose someone, you begin to shape yourself around their comfort. You become less honest, less natural, less free, and that shrinking changes the energy of the relationship. Because desperation does not deepen connection, it weakens it. Not always because the other person is cruel, but because human beings naturally move away from energy that feels unstable, grasping, or dependent. Think about it honestly. Have you ever deeply respected someone who constantly abandoned themselves to keep you happy? Or did part of you begin to feel less drawn, less curious, less inspired? Begging makes you smaller, and people rarely fall deeply in love with what feels diminished. But the greatest damage is not what happens in the relationship, it is what happens inside you. Each time you beg for love, you stop trusting yourself a little more. You override your discomfort. You silence your instincts. You ignore the part of you that whispers, "This doesn't feel right." Over time, that voice grows quieter. You begin to normalize neglect. You call inconsistency complexity. You call emotional distance independence. You call disrespect misunderstanding. All so you do not have to face one fear, being alone. But loneliness does not ruin people. Self-betrayal does. Every time you stay where you are not valued, you teach yourself that your needs are optional. Every time you chase someone who gives little back, you reinforce the belief that love must be earned through effort, pain, and endurance. That belief is the foundation of powerlessness. Power begins the moment you understand one simple truth. Love that requires begging is not love. It is fear mixed with attachment. Real love does not ask you to persuade, perform, or prove. Real love meets you where you are. So the first step in loving yourself more than anyone else is not confidence, it is withdrawal. Not withdrawal from people, withdrawal from the habits that cost you your dignity. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing clarity from people committed to confusion. You stop investing deeply where there is no reciprocity. At first, this will feel uncomfortable. Your body is used to reaching outward for reassurance. Your mind will panic. It will ask, what if they leave? Let them. Not because you do not care, but because anything that survives only through your begging is already broken. And when you stop begging, something begins to return. Your nervous system softens. Your energy comes back. Your attention returns to your own life. Your sense of self becomes less scattered. This is where power is rebuilt, not as arrogance, not as coldness, but as presence. You become someone who can stay without fear, someone who can leave without hatred, someone who does not need to be chosen in order to feel whole. And here is the paradox. The less you beg for love, the more capable you become of real love. Because love given from wholeness is clean. It does not cling. It does not panic. It does not demand proof every day. It simply exists, steadily, honestly, freely. In the chapters ahead, you will understand where this pattern began, why your body reacts the way it does, and how to rebuild your self-worth without closing your heart. But for now, remember this. The moment you stop begging for love is the moment you begin reclaiming your power. And once that power returns, everything changes.